Welcome to the F1 Money Gang Pick Ems presented by Grid Rivals. Yes, this is probably one of many shows that we're going to be doing here. This is strictly Pick Ems apps only. We will maybe touch on like some DFS at times and fantasy leagues, but today our main focus is just going to be the Pick Ems side of the app. As you guys know, we have the Discord channel. You can find us in there. We are talking odds live constantly, happening 24/7, especially right now. So come and talk to Qatar Grand Prix betting if you want in in our Discord. But our main focus today is going to be Pick'ems, and I got our one and only Lights Out Bets F1. What's going on?
Hey man, good to be here. I think we're both pasting on smiles after that shit show of a sprint race to bet on.
Yeah.
But we're back for
Oh,
more pain tomorrow, baby.
it's been super painful. And for the listeners, if you have been living under a rock or have never followed F1, well, let me just tell you, it was a shit show. So this weekend, I will just touch on the few things that we noticed. I would, the things that we would say, the variables that we were not expecting, which was one, Qatar. It's not the typical, you know, motorsports track for an, or at least I would say an F1 car. It any car can go on there, but it is really made for MotoGP. I think you pointed that out. Been there twice, I think in the past 2 years or past 3 years. I'm sorry. Before that, I couldn't recall the last time they were there. I think it was like in the 2000s. So it's not a typical track that they're used to. Throw in that it's a weekend, so you have less tires. Pirelli doesn't know how their tires are going to react at this track too. And then the elements at Qatar, which was traction being, very critical between the sand, new surface, and then the one thing that was the massive variable in the entire weekend, which won't play in as big an effect as it was today, but it could play tomorrow. Just depends on how these drivers are. Track limits. Obviously, that was a crucial thing in qualifying. They just delete your time, and that's where we're having trouble. But with the race, you do get a little bit of leniency to a point, then penalties will start getting accounted for at that point. So those were just a few variables to call out. It was very tough day. Yes, it's like we battled and we're licking our wounds a little bit today. Um, but I'm excited, man. I want to focus on Grid Rival. Um, for most of the listeners that may not know what Grid Rival is, um, uh, obviously, if you've been playing Price Picks, Underdog, you guys understand that the concept of pick 'em. You got to pick multiple, drivers, and then you pair them up. Maybe you go up to like 5, 6x, and then your winnings go from like 2x to whatever it was. I can't remember what the max is at this point. But Grid Rival has launched a beta for a lot of us, including myself, which I've dived into. And quite honestly, man, I've never been a big fan of Pick'em until you introduced it to me, actually. And I downloaded my two apps. I think it was Price Picks and Underdog. I was entered into a whole new world. I didn't like it. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like it at first. But then I started getting the understanding and I saw that there was value, especially with F1, obviously. And that's where I've strictly focused. But Grid Rival launched. They have a beta, and quite honestly, and I kid you guys not, this app is actually pretty badass, especially because they are just focused on motorsports. So NASCAR, MotoGP, they especially F1, of course. And I've been kind of getting into the ear and saying you've got to get me IndyCar. IndyCar is something I really want, and it may go further beyond with the WEX series, IMSA. You never know. So beautiful app is something that I just absolutely love. And if you guys want a promo code, you can find it. You can download the app. It's just right there in our links in our description. So mobile only. But before I've dominated what Grid Rivals is, I wanted to get Malcolm to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. You summed it up there. really approachable group, and you can tell that everybody involved over there is a motorsport fan. It really shines through in the way they've developed their product. They really take a bottom-up approach. Their whole angle is the motorsports crowd is one big enough that it justifies its own betting company, provide fun and entertaining options on the sports book and on the pick'em side and fantasy. And two, it's untapped and it's largely ignored by major sports books and DFS apps. The way these apps typically work is they take more of a top-down approach, focus naturally on the major sports, the mainstream sports we call them. NFL, NBA, MLB are the main ones over here in North America, and they take a lot of action. So at the end of the day, their motorsports line makers don't have nearly enough resources. Sometimes it's a guy just simply copying other books' lines. GridRival is not taking that approach at all. They're doubling down on the opportunity, the growth we're seeing in not just Formula One, but all of the Formula leagues and all the motorsports leagues, and just a really exciting partnership for us because if somebody in our Discord or even somebody on Twitter like has a good idea, tags us, tags them, they'll actually listen to it and check it out. So we're already seeing some of our input showing up in a lot of their line options, and just couldn't be happier to be working alongside these guys as they grow, as we grow. We think it's a fantastic partnership, and between me, Capper, and the listeners, some of their lines are pretty loose as they still figure out how to fine tune their projections and stuff. So we'll hopefully take advantage of a few of those tonight. To be totally upfront, Capper and I intentionally didn't look at any lines before this show. So the idea is the listeners and the viewers that take the time to listen to this, not just for Qatar tomorrow, but also for any GP weekend when you're building your picks, you can see our thought process and how we think through this stuff, and how the driver's positions, what we think will happen, how that stacks up, or how that impacts the bottom of the grid, how like total expected finish drivers, classified drivers, how that influences the lines, etc. So excited to do this. We want to keep it short and just bang out kind of our top 2 or 3 plays on GridRival. We will also look at underdog and prize picks towards the end, and get you guys some plays so that you can get them booked in before the race tomorrow, which is 1 p.m. Eastern time, I believe. So we've got
1 p.m. Eastern. Yep. No, and it's really awesome description there of and that's why we have you, right? You really get in depth with how these apps work. You really get it. They are definitely great. I think that's probably why I latch on, but also just the user interface from a usability perspective. I've used Price Pick, I've used Underdog, and I got to say, GridRivals just seems to just catch my eye more than anything. I would say out of all the 3, I would definitely call that out as one of my favorites. But yeah, there is definitely an opportunity. We can go through it. Like Malcolm just said, we have not actually looked at the lines. I actually said after the race today, I wasn't going to even just look. I just needed a little break. Also, there was a big football game I had to watch this afternoon. So that was probably another reason. But without further ado, I will share my screen. I'm going to let everyone know it's a mobile app only. So unfortunately, I can't pull it up on the web. I wish I could. Ross, if you're listening, get us that web based. But let me at least share my screen because I got screenshots from one of our own in the Discord, so we can all take a look together, and you can actually see it. So you can actually get an idea of what this thing looks like. So not much of a difference, better or worse. You won't get confused. By the way, you'll see better or worse, which is kind of nice. I like that. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So this is the first 4, and obviously it's going to be the top guys. You're not going to really see Max Verstappen, and that's kind of common, right? You're not going to see that really with underdog. I think we saw it once in the past 8 weeks, 9 or longer than that. But we got Sergio Perez, 6.5, Lewis Hamilton, 3.5, Lando Norris, 4.5, and Charles Leclerc, 6.5. And before anything else, I got to make sure I remember the grid, what the grid's going to be like.
I pulled that
mixed
up
up
as
with
well.
the sprint race too. So yeah,
I'll just rattle it
how
off.
do you want me to go through all of them first and then we come back, or should we just focus on these four and go to the next? What do you want to do?
Maybe let's do just go over all the options first, then maybe we'll focus on like the top half of the grid.
Okay. All right. So called off these four. The next four, we got George Russell at 3.5, Carlos Sainz 6.5, Lance Stroll 13.5, Esteban Ocon 9.5, Pierre Gasly 9.5, Albon 11.5, Yuki 11.5, Valtteri Bottas 11.5, Magnussen 15.5, Nico 15.5, Joe 15.5, Logan 15.5, and
Wow.
then Piastri 4.5, and then Alonso 5.5. And one thing I do want to call out, the biggest difference you guys are going to see out of this is Grid Rivals gives you all these options. Most of the other guys won't do it. I think Price Picks probably is the one when it comes to positioning is going to be the least amount, and then UD maybe has a little bit more. Here's a good one. I do want to call out one other thing before, and I know I'm getting ADD with this. One thing Grid Rivals does, they do matchups as well, and this is
Yep.
one of my favorites. And you can combine the matchups with the positioning, and it's basically implying all the implied kind of odds here are going to be similar to what they have, but you might catch some fun ones. So we got some matchups, but we'll get into the matchups in a second. Let's go back. Whoops. So we had Perez 6.5, Hamilton 3.5. My strategy when I've approached this thing, and let me know what your thoughts are. I like to do two cards first off for all the listeners. I'm a two card guy. I like to maybe pick three. I would like to get 3 2 cards made up with Grid Rivals. Sometimes I go 4. Very rarely do I go beyond that, but that's just the way I look. And I try to combine. Lately, what I've been trying to do is finding one of those bottom feeders in the 15.5, because you just saw we had 4 or 5 in, or let's just say 4 right at this point, that were 15.5 with one of the guys that's in that 5.5, 6.5 range, because someone's not going to be in there. So that's where I try to focus my attention on, is who are those likely guys to be better or worse in those two range, combine them, and then I'll keep finding the others. So
Yep. Yeah, I think that makes total sense. Like for the average player who's just starting out their pick'em journey, focusing on 2 and 3 picks is the way to go until you get your feet under you. You probably underestimate just how hard it is to get 5 drivers right in an F1 race. There's just so much variance, especially going into tomorrow's race. We have a lot of things to consider. So before I go in depth on what all the different factors are, I just strongly suggest stick to 2 and 3 picks, at least off the start.
yeah.
Nothing wrong with some 4 and 5s if our confidence level is high.
Oh
Like
yeah.
on a track like Monaco, where there's only a give or take a couple positions that a driver can realistically finish in. Compared to Qatar, like you're seeing 15.5. That's the first thing I noticed. All the worst drivers are at 15.5, which tells
Oh
us
yeah.
Grid Rival thinks there's going to be at least 4 drivers that don't finish the race, which is probably accurate based on what we saw today. Inexperienced drivers going into the sand trap, and then they're done. I think that's different than the last time they raced here. It seemed like they could get out of the sand last time, but that was certainly not the case today. We saw 3 safety cars in 19 laps, so it gives you a hint of what we're going to see tomorrow. And then, as you mentioned in the opening, like Pirelli's been pretty upfront that they have no clue what's going to happen with the tires, and they're
Unreal.
clearly quite concerned. So I think everybody at Formula One is being pretty politically correct, but the weekend has been a total shit show, I think, from when organizing a race and a quality race perspective. But we don't have to go on to that tangent. We'll just stick to what we think is going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I agree. That's what's making this kind of challenging. Pick'ems or betting, it doesn't matter. It's hard to predict what's going to happen. We've also gone back and forth. Are we thinking 2 stop? Like last year, probably should have, or the time before, it should have been 2 stops. Now they're saying they're calling that they might be requiring 3. I think we had some discussions about how long will these tires last. You've not only have they made it harder on themselves by giving them only one FP1 session, and obviously with the sprint race you get less allocated tires, which is like,
Yeah.
why do we do that? So it's hard to tell what's going to happen. I know we had some of the tire data in our Discord, and we did spot some inconsistency. I believe someone brought up Alpine, Botas, and someone else. I can't remember who else that was mentioned.
Hulk.
May be, is it Hulkenberg?
Yeah.
Maybe in a disadvantage tomorrow if there is a required 3-stop. So do we go and approach it with there's is probably going to be a 3-stop? If so, you got Hulkenberg starting in 15th position. They have it priced at 15.5. Does that mean Joe has an opportunity to get out of the 20th position? Maybe Magnussen or Logan. Logan's actually, oh no, he's 16th. That's right. He's 16th. So not
I'm
all
see
these guys are going to be there.
I'm seeing Ocon and Perez and Gasly and Alonso all have their hearts, as well as Stroll, and then all of the top 7 guys all have a pair of new hards. On the medium front, sorry, this chart is a
So
little bit
Gasly
hard to
does.
read.
Yeah.
It looks like if I could find somebody with 2 X's. Yeah, there's nobody with a new medium and a new hard, which is interesting. You basically had to choose which tire to sacrifice in FP1.
Yeah, most of there's only one team I think that ran hards. Two.
So Albon, this is brand new mediums.
So
Both,
Albon has some mediums.
yeah.
Yeah, but he's struggling. He's been struggling all weekend, man.
Bottas, Sonoda, both the Haas, both the Alfa Romeos, both the Williams, and both the AlphaTauris. The guy, I'm gonna guess it's the guys who went out early in the sprint qualifying.
I'm very tempted. Like my one thing I like to do is and it's not just the GridRival or Pick Ems app, is if I spot something where I'm like, that caught my eye immediately, I'm gonna latch onto that thing. It's the first play. It's Sergio Perez at 6.5. I mean, this is probably the one time I say if I fade him, if I go worse than 6.5, it's the one time he's probably going to get freaking podium too. But he has shown me nothing. He has literally shown me nothing to give me that confidence that he will be at 6.5 or higher. I know that sounds like very amateur-ish style, but really, seriously, what has he shown us recently to make us think that way? But does he have the tires? Number one, I do like Red Bull's strategy. It's up there with Mercedes, top-notch strategy, right? They rarely mess up. I'm just like, my approach just in general tomorrow is, what is the safest bets? Take the ones that know strategy, Red Bull and Mercedes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you want the drivers that are reliable and aren't gonna try to pass 3 wide like Perez today.
Like, to me, Hamilton at 3.5
Yeah, exactly.
almost is like, I don't like taking those 3.5s. Let me just tell you that. I
Oh,
think
really?
those are,
That's
yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah. But Hamilton better seems like the way to go. How does he mess up? What is the way he messes up?
I'm not gonna answer that truthfully. But I think a lot could
I mean,
happen tomorrow.
Him and Russell going into each other, of course, fighting each other because Russell is second.
I'm just worried if there's 3 pit stops. Anyone
That really
from
shakes things up.
anyone from the 3rd row back
Well, here,
It's
let me
it's
get off
just
the
gonna be
screen
a
share.
mess.
Well, okay.
But
Let's
here,
talk about this. Okay, so you have I mean, legitimately, you have the top teams just sitting there in the top six. You have a Ferrari, you have an Aston Martin, you have Piastri,
Mhm.
Hamilton, Russell, Verstappen. What? Let's talk. Let's forget about Verstappen tires. Who has the advantage? If there is a three stopper, who has the advantage?
So Mercedes is gonna lose a half second every pit stop. So if there's an extra two, 1.5 pit stops, you lose a second that way. But do you trust Mercedes team strategy and driver skill, which they have an edge in? Um, one just based on the talent of their guys, but also I think they're the only ones that are side by side.
Mm-hmm.
So and they're in points mode. Like they got to rein Russell in because every time he gets eyes for winning a race, like you saw that sprint today,
Yeah,
he was just like,
yeah.
I'm gonna like I'm. He's just talking himself up how good he was, and he ends up like barely beating Lewis, who started 12th or 13th. It's like settle down, man. He's choked a lot recently when he's at the top, and I know today it was mostly just tires, but still, in the moment you can tell he gets busy mentally and
Yeah.
starts like calling off the plan, and his engineers clearly today there was like two of them on the radio like, yeah, no, we're not coming in for a pit stop, bro. Like settle down.
That was a stupid call. Like, why would you do that? What
Yeah,
do you?
but
I
you can
mean,
tell in his head he's almost like signs where he thinks he knows better than his team, which isn't
mm,
like you just don't see that.
yeah,
Even
yeah.
if Max and Lewis and Alonso feel that way, you like Alonso's maybe had one slip up all year. So, anyways, my point is, I'm kind of rambling here, but I think Lewis is safe. Like Lewis, Alonso, and Max are the three guys that aren't going to go off the track on this,
Mm.
newly resurfaced track. After that, probably looking at guys like Bottas and Albon that can kind of bring it home safely. So drivers drivers I would back are at the top of the grid and the bottom of the grid. So the front two rows, and then from there, the more talented drivers. I think Lewis better than 3.5. We can agree on.
Yeah.
Mercedes is going to manage this race,
Hmm.
and Alonso and Leclerc are going to hold up the McLarens. At least one of them, because like Norris starting in 10th, and Alpine's no slouch this weekend either, and I think they're right beside each other. So
Well, what about Norris though? Norris got his lap time deleted. He should have been what second, wasn't it? At or third? Let's just say top,
yeah,
somewhere in the top three.
second, yeah, yeah.
If he's supposed to be 4.5, if they play their cards right, I know they had some issues today, um, or during qualifying, I believe. But he could he get back into the top four? He has to pass Bottas, Ocon, Gasly, his own teammate, Ferrari, Alonso. If there's three stops, you would have to imagine they're going to try to undercut. And it seems like the common theme with Norris is that he's been behind Piastri in a few qualifying sessions and going into the race, but he ends up ahead of him. I know Piastri is a little bit more, he's harder on his tires. Maybe we have the answer right there. Do we fade Piastri?
Well, like one, I'm just want to pull up the soft tire data, and I
Mm-hmm.
know speculating on team strategy never works out well because they just have so many more resources. They run the simulators, and
Mm-hmm.
you and I kind of spitballing will never touch their plans. But like,
True.
wouldn't you want
True.
to start on softs and assume one of the new drivers is going off in the first 10 laps for a safety car? Like you plan for a safety car in the first 10 laps, so your first pit is going to be from softs to hards or mediums.
They were able to do a solid 10 laps. It sounded like, I know there was some safety cars, but it sounded like that.
You got some guys
And,
with
and then you said what? We said mediums can go what, 20 something laps? 25?
uh yeah. Well, I guess
Was it?
today they were up against softs. You couldn't really track.
By the time they got warmed up and everything, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the guys on mediums were flying at by the end.
So it looks like your guy, Lewis, has a new set of softs, which would make sense because he went out in Q2
Yeah.
today in sprint. And then same with Sainz because he went out in Q2 of qualifying. So Hamilton with a new set of softs to start off this race. What does Lewis have? Or sorry, Russell, because Russell's on softs today, so he doesn't even.
Looking it up right now.
Yeah, he's down bad. He only has a 2 lap
Here,
old tire.
here's what I will do. I will screen share so that people can see what we have in the Discord.
Yeah, this is all these stats and resources are available for free in our Discord. So if you're planning your slips, it's all in one easy spot.
Boom. Look at
So
that.
what I'm talking about, thank you, Capper. On the far right, there's a little confusing to read, but those zeros mean 0 laps
Mm-hmm.
on their tires.
Mm-hmm.
The
Right here.
X means
Yep.
completely brand new. So I think zeros might have meant they went out for like a warm-up lap or something. I don't really know. But anyways, Sainz has a 0 and Hamilton has a 0, as well as obviously the back of the grid because they didn't make it to Q3. So they didn't need to burn that set. So when you see Hamilton's 0 and he's starting from third, you got to think he's in good shape. Plus, he's got a brand new set of hards.
Yep.
And a brand new set of mediums. There
Mm-hmm.
you go. So right there, tire strategies, or sorry, tire availability is going to go his way, plus skill, plus he's in the second row.
Car's capable. We
He's
know
starting
that.
third, right?
Yeah, he's third. Now, that's the one thing I don't like about Pick Ems right now. And the Pick Ems is taking that guy that's already in that spot. But in this situation, I think you
Well,
kind of have to.
the evens are the dirty side of the track because like Norris had a terrible lift today.
Yeah, but he also was on a cold set of mediums. So that's what we learned about the mediums today was
Right.
it was not just 1 or 2 laps. It took a little bit more. And then of course with the safety car brought him back, right? They needed a couple more laps. And then when they actually had 5 or 6 laps, softs were burning out. You saw that those mediums were kicking in perfectly for them. So, but I like that what
Love
you
that.
said though. He has every combo of tire combination he needs. Um, let's just hypothetically say that it ended up being like a 4 stopper for whatever reason, because whatever the reason may be, but he still has an option. He still has a set of softs that can last, that's only got 1 lap on it. He's got a few sets of mediums that have some life on it. If you can pull 25 out of the mediums, 25, or let's just say 20 out of the mediums, you got plenty of options outside of that. Like the hard should not give you any issues to last for 25 laps. Well, how many laps does this race anyways? What, 50, 57,
Yeah,
59,
high 50s.
high 50s? So you're already at that 50 mark, and then you have a pair of softs. So I think you're right, man. Like I think that is
Okay, we're
safest
in.
approach. Three
Lewis
and a half. I
better
mean,
3.5.
I feel like, and for our listeners, I don't typically do these, but this is for this weekend specifically. You have to. And by the way, if you have any questions, if you can tag us even on Twitter, you can DM us. I'll even tell you, because most of the time, one thing I love about Grid Rivals is they'll send a push notification to let you know that they've updated the lines. They're one of the fastest to update the lines too. They get it out there by like a Monday or a Tuesday. So that's like the first thing I'm loading up, and I'm trying to get my cards in before they actually adjust.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's
so
lots of value early when they first drop the lines for sure.
let's talk about, then you said let's combine with them. Oh, okay. Who's at a disadvantage between Ocon and Gasly? One of those two is definitely not hitting 9.5. They're both 9.5. I'd
Yeah,
love
you're right.
to
Yeah, let's
take one.
focus on that.
It sounds like Gasly's the fade, because Gasly, well, I mean, he does have a new medium, new set of hards, but all the rest of his tires are kind of. Ocon at least has, yeah, Ocon's kind of in the same position, but
Mhm. Yeah, Ocon got robbed today.
Where's Ocon starting actually? And they're both right next to each other, 7 and 8.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So 7,
Hmm.
8 plus Norris, Perez, and Sainz, in theory, anyway, puts them
Yeah, pushes
in
them back.
10th and 11th. Take the guy who's in behind a spot.
So Ocon, man, I don't know if I want to do. That is one I want to. I want to do a 2 card though. I want to focus one on them.
Well,
So maybe Ocon. What worse?
what do the sports books have their head to head at? I'm just gonna pull up Bet365.
See it.
Yeah, Ocon is plus 110 to Gasly at minus 150. So there's your tiebreaker. For the listeners, you kind of take a top down approach, look at other sharp sports books that you trust their data, trust their projections. Obviously, they do it for a living. Just as a tiebreaker, you don't necessarily have to use them as a Bible. But that's what I would suggest doing in this case, unless you have something you like or don't like about one specific driver capper. I know Gasly's better looking, so harder to fade him.
No, no, I don't. I'm actually indifferent to both this weekend, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's a great
Um,
word for how to approach them.
just they've been kind of like next to each other. I feel like one of them that I did want to call out was Albon. He has he's got a similar situation to Hamilton. He's actually got 2 sets of mediums that he could use. Tsunoda does. Oh, Jesus. Stroll does. What is Stroll's? Stroll's is 14.5. Do you actually think he can pull it together in a race?
So Stroll's line, I think, is 14 and a half on Prize Picks.
So it's about the same.
Well,
Mark is saying it's the same.
he's 13 and a half on GridRival. And I think GridRival's right.
No,
Stroll's,
it shows 14.5 on mine.
does it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's 14.5.
Who was I looking at 13 and a half then? 13 and a half on mine.
Maybe it moved. But mine shows 14.5.
If it's 14
Man,
and a half, that's an under for me. He's only 16th or something, isn't he? He's not in 20th.
Mhm.
Or maybe I'm drunk. He's 17th with Sargent and Hulk in front of him. Like, we got a couple free squares.
You know what I'm thinking, man? You want my wild one? You want the one that I think that maybe people will think I'm crazy about? I'm thinking Piastri worse than 4.5.
So Alonso, keep in mind, Alonso is also worse than 4.5, which is
So
pretty
where's Alonso?
pretty awful line. Sorry, 5.5. Like, is Alonso really gonna stay in the top five?
I think
Whichever.
Alonso was taken off of grid rivals. Now I'm looking at it.
Oh, you're on your phone.
I am. I'm looking at it on my phone live.
Okay, so Stroll bumped up to 14 and a half.
Yeah. So some of the
That's a thing of beauty.
yeah. So maybe you were thinking better though, right?
Yeah,
Than
for
14 and a
sure.
half.
Yeah, he can pass Hulk, whose tires will die, and he doesn't have that much for good tires. He has 0 hards. Yeah, he's in trouble. And then he can pass Sargent. Like Sargent would be in the gravel. Stroll kept it together today, but maybe that's just because he started so far back. He just needs to get one on track pass, and then there'll be like a DNF in front of him. And then he'll get Hulk like on a pit stop because Haas just shred through tires and take 3.5 second pits. Like Stroll will gain 3 seconds on Hulkenberg just on the pit stops alone.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like So far, we're going in with Hamilton better and Stroll better. I don't feel super confident in those plays, but
I'm not, but I think that is one that you can combine. Um, I am looking. I did take just a quick look at the matchups to see if Alonso was there. Alonso is there, but they have him combined in the matchups with Albon. With Albon, a 7.5 gap. So for the listeners, when you see the plus,
mm-hmm.
7.5, which is next to Albon's name, they're saying Albon will be within better or worse of 7.5 positions of Alonso. So do you think they will be with, will he be further or closer to Alonso in this situation? I don't think I want to play with that, but I do want to go back to Alonso. You're saying he'll fade. He will fade to maybe what, 7 or 8,
Definitely
given that.
not 4.5, whatever he opened at. It's crazy.
Damn, I kind of wish I did look at my app to see that, man. I'm not gonna lie.
5.5.
That was the one.
So he's not passing the three guys in front of him. So he's starting fourth. So for him to be fifth or better, I just got to talk about like the amount of DNS there's going to be tomorrow and
But we
how
can't predict those. We can't predict them.
we can kind of lean into it though. Like we don't know who it's going to be, but we know there's going to be probably at least 4 cars out. So playing any worse slips is going to be risky. Which is why like Sargent is at 15.5. Like you should look at that and be like 15.5, that's gross. There's no way he's gonna be better than 5 drivers, but there's gonna be 5 accidents or 4 accidents, which is why that's his line.
Hmm.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up, which is to our benefit, is the underdog side of the rivals. So if we have tons of DNFs, like Sargent plus 14.5 to Max Verstappen is an extreme example of this situation. But if
Is
Sargent
that what they have?
finished,
Is that what they have at UD?
no, this is GridRival or the
Oh,
screenshot.
oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, no worries. Just for the listeners, I'm Canadian, so I can't even access these pick'em lines yet. It's not, they haven't launched up here, so I'm just looking at stale screenshots. So my apologies. But anyways, you got the worst driver paired with the best driver in this rivalry. So Sargent plus 14.5. If there's only 15 drivers that finish, he automatically wins. If he's 15th, minus 14.5 would put him at 0.5 compared to Max's first place, and he wins. So he's got an out there of just simply finishing tomorrow. He's also got the out. It hasn't happened a lot in 2023, but if Max has an engine problem or makes a mistake and he's not in first, like if he finishes second or third, obviously, then that goes in Logan's favor as well. Like if Max finishes worse than fifth or sixth, this line automatically wins, which has been a non-factor this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just the most extreme example. I'm not saying to play that one. That one feels very trappy. But like Alex Albon plus 7.5 to Fernando Alonso. Albon's individual line is 11.5. So what's 11.5 minus, or sorry, yeah, 11.5 minus 7.5 is fourth. So they're assuming Alonso's going to be fourth. Like that's gross. We should probably jump all over that because Albon will finish if he, again, always a DNF risk with every single driver.
For
There's
sure, for sure.
more
Yeah.
DNF risk in the midfield because they're trapped compared to the start of the grid and the back of the grid. Albon is starting right in the middle.
He's
Right?
starting 14th. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, smack in the middle. If there's an accident in front, he can't dodge it. If somebody crams him or rear ends him, like the least skilled drivers are at the back. They're the ones that are gonna late brake and steer into him. So high DNF risk, but his rival against Alonso looks very strong. If he finishes the race, we have to assume he finishes ahead of Sargent. Both Haas's, probably at least one, AlphaTauri, at least one of the Alfa Romeos. that line, like 11.5 is a fair line, but his rival is off price because they're inflating Alonso's value.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on Piastri, man. I'm not gonna lie. I think one of my favorite ones now that we've talked about Hamilton and just in this entirety of it, one of my favorite plays on Grid Rivals right now is the matchup Hamilton over Piastri by 1.5. I honestly
Now we're
believe
talking.
I believe that is one of the plays that needs to be combined with something else, and that's going to be the winner. Got to find that second winner.
So what is it about Piastri that makes you want to fade him?
Just in a race, he continuously like he showed us how well he was today with without pits. He had medium set of tires too, right? Or did he have the soft? When he started,
Mediums, because Russell passed them on softs.
he had mediums, right? So the mediums we saw came through, they were fine. Like every single person. We know that it didn't matter which driver. You had a set of mediums, you were passing that person on softs.
Yep.
One downfall to Piastri is he is definitely harder on his tires than his teammate, and it's shown. He's been awesome in one lap, just quality sim runs. He's been awesome in small sample runs, 5 laps. You can see it in the data with practices, and then you saw it today with how well he did with 20. But put him in a race, and he's got to fight people. He's got to do different things. Fuel load is much different, and he's
True.
pushing hard. He's going to be harder on his tires. And we go back, and we spent a lot of time talking about Hamilton. I don't need to rehash that. We know and we're implying he's going to stay in that top 3. Do we really think Piastri is going to just continue to stay up the field, or he's going to have to sit here and battle Leclerc, Alonso, the two Alpine bros,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
Norris, his own teammate, Sainz, Perez? Like he's still got to fight those guys, right? And then do we really think he's going to win that battle? And then on top of that, his tire situation is not the same as Hamilton's.
Yeah, and Team Man brought up a good point. Their straight line speed has always been their weakness. They have to qualify well and then defend their position,
Yeah.
usually to the likes of Mercedes. Well, in this case, Mercedes is in front of them.
Yeah.
So the top 3 is probably spoken for. And then, yeah, Leclerc is going to be tough to pass. Alonso is never easy to pass, even if he's in an inferior car. And then he's got his own teammate,
Yep.
which will, by the halfway point, McLaren will be figuring out how to overcut or undercut Piastri to get Norris in front of him. Well, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not after today. They view them more as equals. But yeah, like Piastri isn't far enough out of the trouble. Like guys like Russell and Hamilton will be insulated from the surge from Sainz, Perez, and Norris coming from 10th to 13th, 10th and 13th all the way up the grid. They're going to have to battle through Piastri and through Leclerc. So they got a tough task. So that's going to insulate the Mercedes very nicely. It's going to make Alonso's life a lot easier, and it's going to make Piastri's life a living hell. And I think fading him in general, yeah, there's a risk he gets tangled up. There's gonna be a lot. There's gonna be a lot of overtakes in that back half of the Q3 people.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We've been noodling on this for a little while. I think we can probably keep going, but I wanted to see if you wanted to input anything in terms of your pit stops with Prize Picks very quickly. I know you are.
Let's confirm our grid rival slip then.
Okay, there you go. Let's do that.
Here's what I have.
Okay, go for it.
Hamilton better, 3.5. We've talked ourselves into that one.
Yep.
All show long. Albon rival over Alonso. It's my favorite play. And my second favorite play is Stroll better than 14.5. And then the other one that you talked about is either Ocon or Gasly worse. Which you're thinking you're going to build a couple slips with each?
I think so. And I'm tempted to, and then I was looking at the matchups too. It's basically the same. It's implying that 9.5, but the uh, Leclerc is paired with Gasly at 3.5, and I think they have Leclerc being at 6.5 with Gasly 9.5, right? So there's an implied 3.5 there. So do I really think Leclerc is going to be better or worse? So I'm thinking of doing that Hamilton matchup with either one. I was thinking maybe I pair it with one of your favorites. You said your first favorite is Albon 14.5
Albon
or
rival.
or Albon, I'm sorry, 7.5, not 14.5, 7.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually very tempted to do that as my matchup card, and I'm going to do that potentially, and then do, because I can't combine. You can't do Hamilton and then Hamilton again. So just FYI, I can't do two Hamiltons. Otherwise, I would have done that. Then do maybe Hamilton with 3.5, and then Stroll 14.5 better, and then pick another two-carder between Gasly and Ocon. We said Ocon though, right? That was the one that was probably going to be the worst.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I can't play on this app, but I would do Hamilton better, Ocon worse, Albon rival, and
Or
Stroll better.
or is today the day that I say F the two Carters? Let me just do these top five.
It's not the track for it, but if yeah, like unit allocation, put a full unit in a couple, maybe two or
Well,
three combos of a two legger, and then do one half unit 4 or 5 legger.
yeah. So unfortunately, I can only do $10 now per card. So I'm gonna have to just do multiple to get myself to a unit. Yeah. Okay. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna book this card because I want to split my matchups. I'm gonna do Hamilton with Stroll better. The Hamilton against Piastri matchup, Stroll better. That's one. It's in. Hold on. It's asking for my location and to
Classic.
show everyone. Hold on. It's still saving. It's still saving. Boom. Entry confirmed. Good luck. Yes, I'll charge my phone.
Very
Don't
nice.
worry.
I was
That's
gonna
one. Okay.
I was gonna show what the app looked like too in the app store, just for
Mm-hmm.
anybody wondering.
And
Good.
then I'm gonna do Hamilton with,
There it is. GridRival.
yes, there it is. That beautiful thing. It's beautiful. Love
Okay,
this app, man. It's
I'm pulling
awesome.
up Underdog and Prize Picks while you do that.
Yes, you do that while I keep looking at some of those grid rivals. I feel like I gotta just do one of these bottom feeders, man. Well, I said,
So this is where it gets
man,
fun. As you
Hulkenberg 15.5.
just wait until you see these underdog lines, man.
Yeah, let me see. Let me see what you got. Let's go see.
Can I share my screen?
Oh yeah.
All right, there we
Oh
are.
yeah.
So exactly what we said before. We're giving
Damn.
GridRival advice. Like you're gonna want to juice your back grid guys to lower finishing positions if you think there's gonna be a lot of DNFs. Underdog didn't get the memo on that. So Underdog
Mm-mm.
is floating Sargent better at 17.5 compared to 15.5 on GridRival. And again, GridRival is new, so we can't assume that they're any smarter than anybody else. This is just
Mm-hmm.
our own opinions on how we think the race is going to go. Zhou at 17.0, which Zhou's starting at the very back. So if somebody in front of him wipes out, he gets to just slow down and chill under safety car, and he got a free position without passing anybody. Whereas if say Mercedes, that happens and there's a wipeout in the midfield, they don't gain any positions. So betting these backer guys is huge when there's gonna be lots of DNFs. Kevin Magnussen 17.0. Don't love that line, but it's better than GridRival. And then same with Nico Hulkenberg at 16.5. They agree with you that Alpine will do well to get a point. Alonso is up to 6.0 on here.
6. Mm-hmm.
And then Stroll, same line. So everybody has the same opinion on Stroll. The problem with this card, if I play all of these guys, is that it has a lot of the drivers that aren't very good. So they're not, like, one of them's going to DNF. So I'll just run it.
Definitely.
I'll just insure it and throw $10 on it. That is how we bake up a nice back grid under. You saw it live. I don't have any opinion on any of these drivers. I'm just playing the macro.
And it's interesting too how they've priced it. It's like they're just 2 spots lower on GridRival than what Underdog has, because they have all these at like 17.5, 17. All those same guys were like 15.5 on GridRivals.
Yeah, where are they? Right
here. Yeah, right there.
So you were looking at the back grid guys. That's why I had to cut you off, because we got to do a bit of line shopping on the Pick Ems.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough options now where you can, if you wanted to, if you loved Hulkenberg because he's a good driver, even though he has his tires
for race.
Tire dag is a huge problem. I'm excited for those guys in Austin with their upgrades. But the point being, if you love him or you love Joe, you should be playing it on the softer line, which is Underdog.
Yeah, 17. So you heard it first.
So we don't have to say much else about, unless there's any other lines that hop out at you. Sainz is up to 7.5 on here. I know he's 6.5 on GridRival. I had a note on him. Like, is Carlos Sainz really gonna crack the top 6 from 12th? Is he that guy?
Oh man.
Looking at this grid.
The thing, I think there's a correlation between Sainz and the Alpines more than anything.
Burn.
I just think that if you're going to say Carlos Sainz is going to be at that 6.5, 7.5, then one of those guys is not going to be there, if not both. Same could be said, I guess, with Perez as well. So, and that's exactly how they have it priced. So
Perez is 6.5, and what is he on Underdog? He's not even on Underdog. Yeah, so to Capper's point, these apps pay out at 2-1. So on GridRival, or even let's do it on Underdog just because that's what I can actually click on. So I'm not actually going to book this ticket, but you can say there's no room for Ocon in the top 10 if, sorry, he's way up here, if Sainz fits in. So basically we're saying Sainz is going to do good, and we're going to get paid out 2-1. Pays up to 3 times. So it pays you your initial plus 2 units. So that's like we were looking at rivalries today for the sprint, and it's like Alonso over Hamilton at even money, Alonso over Hamilton at minus 150. It wasn't the exact same bet, but on the Pick'em apps, you could go Alonso better and Hamilton worse, and their lines were the same. There is some instances where Alonso could still beat Hamilton and they'd both be better, they'd both be worse. But for like twice as much return, you can sometimes look to these Pick'em apps, which they pay out the exact same if you get your 2 picks right, no matter what the line is, compared to books where they adjust the payout, but they don't adjust the finishing position. So just some nuance if you have access to sports books and Pick'ems. So that's my rant. I don't know if there's anything else you love besides our back grid.
No, I think that the only other thing to point out was Albon is 13.5 on Underdog, 11.5 here. So I just stress about that one. I think that if I'm going to do better, yes, exactly, I would do better there because of his tire situation. Of course, we can sit here and beat a dead horse about DNFs, but I don't want to think about DNFs in this right now, though. He has had his squirrely moments in the race, for sure. But I think, or in the weekend, I should say, but in the race, maybe he gets it together. I don't know. But again, I think I need to remove that from my mind and just look at the numbers. What does the number say? So,
sure.
Albon better. Yeah, Joe. The only thing I don't like about the 17 is I like the hooks in these for
Yeah.
sure. It would be
And
nice, but
Prize Picks pays out a hook at 1.5. So if Albon hits for me and Joe pushes, Prize Picks pays out. Underdog refunds no matter what happens. So if Albon loses and Joe lands right on 17, I'll get a refund. If he wins, I'll also get a
yeah,
refund. So yeah, I agree
yeah,
with Cap. Don't play the 0.0s on here. But yeah, like so after this, I'll be building a couple different combos like
yeah.
Bottas better, Albon better. Oh, it just kind of glitched on me there.
Yeah, and I plan to
Lawson
just
better, Hulk better. Just back grade unders, and I'm just saying the midfield's going to crash, and these guys are going to
yeah.
float up to their finishing positions for free. One of them might crash though. That's the risk.
I do like that call out though, man. Never really tried to think of it that way as much, but definitely do like that. Oh yeah, you got some price picks too.
13 and a half. That's what Albon was, right? Sorry, my
Yeah.
brain is
13 and a half there and 11 and a half
tired.
on grid rivals. Mm-hmm.
So there you go. There's a bit of um yeah.
And explain the overtake points so our listeners know.
So prize picks is they're scumbags. Prize picks
Yeah.
instead of just offering you straight lines, they do silly stuff like this. Or the other thing they'll do is like you see Grid Rival did better or worse. You just know that 11th or better, 11th, 10th, 9th is better, and 12th, 13th, 14th is worse. These guys will do more or less and make you do the math and hope you screw something up. There's been guys in our Discord where they'll put less when it's finishing position, thinking that they're fading the person, but they're actually backing them because less means like first, second, 1, 2, or 3 grid position is a smaller number than 4, 5, or 6. So
Yeah.
something to be aware of. Price Picks also doesn't pay out as much as other pick 'em apps. They don't have to. They're the market leader. But overtake points is simply your starting position. Sorry, your finishing position minus your starting position, or the other way around.
Yeah.
So if he finishes 12th and he started 14th, it's his starting position minus his finishing position. That would be 2.0 overtake points. He would clear this line. The other thing is, if he's starting in front of his teammate and gets passed by his teammate, he loses half a point. If he starts behind him and passes him, he gains a half a point. So there's a slight danger with these ones. So sorry, I'm in the points, but Lando Norris, for example, could get a half point bonus for passing Piastri. Piastri can only lose a half point because he's starting in front of Norris. It isn't actual live on track overtakes because that would actually take some effort from the bookies to actually watch the race and like go through the FIA documents. They're too lazy for that. So if you're actually thinking like Norris can definitely pass 5 people in that race, in this race, it's totally free. He's fine at overtaking. I mean, Sainz is great at it. He'll have fresh tires at the start of the race. That's not how they tally it, unfortunately. But an app like GridRival in the future will have stuff like that. How many on-track overtakes will you see from this driver in this race? Like that's actually fun for motorsports fans, right? They can predict that stuff. But unfortunately, we take what we can get with these kind of all sports pick 'em apps. And as Capper mentioned earlier, there's only so many options. We only have 5 here, another 5
Yeah.
here. So we got 10. We got half the grid.
Yeah. Probably won't do any, to be honest with you. I probably won't even touch price picks for this weekend. I'm gonna stick to the ones that are giving me options like grid rivals. I'll probably do maybe one underdog. We'll see. Um, honestly, I've had more success with grid rivals than the other two this year for sure. Um,
Sorry,
it's
as
been
you
very, very, very hit or miss with prize picks with F1. Same with underdog, I would even say. And in grid rivals, it's been solid for me.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
These pick'ems are a grind for sure. You're losing better, but sorry, you can be a losing player like record wise.
Mhm.
Pretty much all pick'em players are, but still be in profit. You're dealing with five pick tickets that pay out 20 times. So you just have to be right more than 1 in 20 times. So you're on a
Yeah.
10 game losing streak and you win the 11th one. You're a profitable pick'em player. So don't get too discouraged or down on yourself. That's how they get you is by the losing. But there's money to be made here, especially these apps, specifically Underdog and Prize Picks. They don't have dedicated F1 guys. They have guys that make lines for motorsports and half a dozen other things. if it's 15 minutes before the race and you hear a driver is taking a grid penalty or he's starting on hards and everybody else is starting on softs, like you can hop on here, find like 3 or 4 pairs and just absolutely load up on the guy. That's where we make our most money. So, or if last second it's going to rain, that's when you want to go to pit stop overs and back grid unders and yeah, all those variance angles. That's how we can beat the bookies is on the news and on beating them when to the line when they're slow.
Yeah.
I was just going to say quickly, Russell is at 3.0 equivalent on here, so you have to translate. He's at 3.0. I think everyone else is at the same.
Three and a half.
Gasly is
Yeah.
at 10.0. So don't play Gasly on here. Play him on underdog or prize picks if you want to back him or fade him. Alonso 8.5 is 5.5. So that one's pretty consistent. And then the overtakes just quickly. Oops, sorry.
I seriously hate that they do that. The F1 points.
Yeah, it's kind of fun because it matches up with the actual points that drivers get
Yeah, I get
paid
it.
out.
I get it.
But yeah, that's actually worth noting. They do pay out the fastest lap point too on price picks. So if you fade a guy and he gets fastest lap and you lose, that's why. Piastri 4.5. Norris is 4.5 too. That's interesting. What was Norris on the other apps?
Four and a half.
Oh, okay.
Or well,
Science
hold on. I
7.0.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4.5. Mm-hmm.
Albon 12.5, right in the middle. Okay. You want to talk pit stops and then call it a night?
Yeah, yeah. Get to the pits, man.
Sweet.
That's probably
So
one I will play.
yeah, it's actually they did bump a couple on us. They haven't bumped them much. But they must have got enough action that they went
Is
for us.
live.
So this
Doing it
is
live.
this is our sheet we've been tracking all season, and also this is last season as well. They didn't race here, so not totally relevant this weekend. In general, though, in the Middle East, the tires are hot. That won't necessarily be the case because they're going to have to pit 3 times, so the tires won't be as hot. But in general, when the tires are hotter, the gunners have a harder time getting them off. So you might gain a slight edge, or if it's raining, the tires are slippery. They have to use those big wet tires, which are heavier. They almost always go over. Tomorrow we're in the desert. It ain't raining. Overs have a slight advantage on the season, 54.5% to 44.5%. And then there's also you get if you play overs, there's a 15% chance that it'll be a botched pit stop that goes over 5 seconds. So in general, play the overs on prize picks pit stops. There's just more outs for overs in general. The host knows it. Everybody likes to back people. Nobody likes to play unders. Life is too short for unders or whatever they say. But don't be afraid to fade your driver in this case. Like over and under is reverse, but you know what I mean. Don't be afraid to fade a guy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the one driver that is looking good is Sonoda. He's at 2.85, and he's been crushing it 2.4. He hasn't even made it to first pit the 2 races prior to that. But the other indicator we look at is the other teammate, and Lawson has been spanking the pits since he's come into Formula One. I think some of these are Daniel Ricciardo's too, but in general, his team is doing great. So Sonoda's line still has value at it, 2.85. That's the only one we're on. Ocon's was looking good at 2.65. They bumped it up to 2.7. So I just want to see what that does. All of a sudden, he's only been over once in the last 3 races and twice in the last 5. So we'll stay away from that one for now. Max Verstappen. So something happened to Red Bull because they were fire at the start of the year. Look at all these blues.
Mm-hmm.
2.1, 2.3, 2.2. They have the only 1.9 on the season. But look at the last 6, 7 races. I don't know if it's because Max has been so dominant, they just take their time, they slow down a bit. But Max specifically hasn't gone under this line in the last 5 races, and he's only gone under it once in the last 7. So you can really see the trend drop off from kind of mid-start season. Look at all these blues in the last few races. Checo's fallen off too. He hasn't been under 2.3 in a while. These big long pit stops usually are from front wing damage, which you might recall he did a bit of that in Japan. He's driving bumper cars. So Max Verstappen over is the other one, and then I guess is the GOAT fade special. You fade Max Verstappen, you fade Lewis Hamilton. He's at 2.85. You can see here, yes, he's gone under 3 of the last 5, but the trend line shows us that they don't go under 2.85 very often. Like their range, I should say, is so you're talking means versus mediums. median, excuse me. 2.76 is their bottom, and their top is more like 3.2, 3.22, 3.18 type range. And that's consistent with Russell as well. So looks like he'll probably go over on his first pit stop. So those are my pit stops. We were going to do Ocon, but they bumped it on us. So we'll do Max. My computer is glitching. Max. Where's Yuki? Not fading the goat Yuki, just the other goats. Lewis. Those were the two I said, right?
Yep.
I think we were looking at Lance Stroll too, but I'll show you that one very quickly just to wrap up. Yeah, Lance Stroll, I was on his over last time, and he cooked me at 2.47. But in general,
just got you.
That team is fading as well. But who knows? I try to keep the narratives out of the pit stops. Like, oh, this guy's looking for revenge. He's gonna get his pit stop under this time. Let's back his under on pit stops. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, every driver wants to win. Every pit crew wants to show well. Just keep the human motivation out of it. This late in the season, all the pit crew are trying to do a good job because they know it's contract renewal season for them for next year. It's basically their tryout. So all eyes are on them. Just assume they're going to try to do their best. Don't think just because Lance Stroll had a bad qualifying, he's going to have a good pit stop or a bad pit stop. He's not. Like, driver performance on track stays out of it. What you want to look for is trends when they show up in that pit box. Are they good at parking the tire? Perez is very, very good at it. It's really the only thing he's better than Max Verstappen at. The other guy who was very good at it was Daniel Ricciardo, that showed up last year. He had a lot of good pit stops, 2.4, 2.3, 2.2. He had a couple fastest ones for the season. That's our entire list for the season. That's how we pull our averages. But obviously Ricciardo isn't here. So Lawson in his place has done a great job, but they nerfed his line on us. He's down to like 2.6 already. So there you have it. There's your 3 pit stops. If you need a 4th, you can roll the dice on that Stroll. But that's my play. And unless you're doing a 5 pick, always stick to powers. The flex payout 2.25 is just an absolute joke. So stick to the 3 miserable. Flex. Yeah, right. Let's do it. So that one's booked. Let's have some fun. Let's win some money back tomorrow from the bookies.
I like it. Hopefully, we'll see. I like that tomorrow it is at noon, so there could be more. Again, if you're listening, just get in the Discord. We're both in there. We'll be in there all morning. I mean, it's kind of nice that we don't have to just get up and right then is the race. But one quick announcement: we are going to be at the Austin Grand Prix, so you'll get to meet Lights and myself. We'll be wandering around. We'll actually be hanging out with a bunch of partners actually that are going to be there. GridRival being one of them. So come and find us. Thursday through Sunday, basically. We'll be there throughout the weekend. Actually, Lights will be getting in on Friday, but I will be there on Thursday. So again, hit us up if you want to come say hi, you want to talk some lines, you want to talk just F1, or you just want to talk Austin, Texas. Doesn't matter. We'll be there. So yeah, any last words, man?
Yeah, huge shout out for GridRival for partnering with us on that. We're excited to hang out with those guys in Austin. We plan to do some features all weekend long. Lots of content coming out when we're live there. Interview a few people that we meet up with and do some various features. Obviously, I'll be in Texas, so I can't even play on sportsbooks. I'll be dialed in on the Pick Ems apps.
Yep. He will live my life. Although there are ways around with the bookies, I'll try to help you with. But anyways, it's been fun, man. I can't wait. This is something that we had talked about continuing to do. And now that we have GridRival on board, we want to keep pushing this thing. And obviously I'm just sold on what they've had as a product, and they've sold me on it. And yeah, I keep playing it, man. It's a great app. It's the first app I load every week. Outside of betting, of course. But no, pleasure. We'll see you tomorrow. Not bright and early. It's gonna be awesome. We'll
actually get an afternoon one.
So yep.
Yes.
All right, guys.
Awesome. See you in the Discord. Thanks, man.
See ya.